Turn to John chapter 21. We're going to start at verse 15. So when they had dined, Jesus saith to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? He saith unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He saith unto him, Feed my lambs. He said to him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? And he saith unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He saith unto him, Feed my sheep. Then he said unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he had said unto him the third time, Lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things, thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus said unto him, Feed my sheep. Now this, I titled this one, Characteristics of a Christian. I got the inspiration from the verses. None of the points are really coming from the verses. I think it's, I forgot what the type of sermon is called, but it's one of the types of sermons we learned about. It's been a while. Anyhow, what is a Christian? I think a Christian is someone who has been forgiven of their sins and maintains a personal relationship with Christ. That's basically what a Christian is. And how can you tell if someone is a Christian? Well, you can ask them, but a lot of people think they're Christians. They're really not. The Bible says you can tell a Christian by the fruits, by their fruits. Now, Jesus asked Peter 3 times if Peter loved him. So I picked out 3 different characteristics that you might notice in a Christian. First off, they're a servant. Back in chapter 13, Jesus shows us an example of what a servant's supposed to be. The disciples called him Lord and Master, and Jesus said they did it rightly so because he was their Lord and Master. But after the Passover supper, while he was preparing to tell them about what was going to happen and he was going to be crucified and everything, after it was over with, he took off his garments and he wrapped a towel around him, and he went around to each of the disciples and he washed all of their feet. He said that the servant isn't greater than the master, and the master isn't greater than the servant. Now we're all servants to Christ, therefore we're all servants to each other, because Christ loves us all. When Jesus washed all their feet, he knew that Judas was going to betray him, and he knew that Peter was going to deny him 3 times. And they hadn't done this yet, but he still went around, he knew it was going to happen, he still went around and washed all their feet. So it doesn't matter who they are, or what they're doing in life, or what they're going to do, what they've done to us, or anything like that, we still have to have a servant's heart toward them. The second thing is these people that love Jesus more than anything else, they trust God. A Christian who loves Jesus more than anything else doesn't worry about what might happen tomorrow. They have faith that he's going to take care of them because Jesus cares about his children. It doesn't mean you don't care and that you don't need to pray about the things that's happened to you or the things that you need. It just means that you'll trust that he'll take care of you. The Bible says, cast your cares on him, for he cares for you. And the way we do that is by praying. It also says that he feeds the sparrows. So doesn't it make sense that he's going to be able to feed us? God created us out of the earth, out of dirt. Now some people think that dirt is a nasty thing, it's a bad thing. They say you're lower than dirt. Dirt has a bad reputation, and I think it has a bad reputation for no reason. First off, God created dirt. And God didn't create any junk. Dirt's very important. Without it, we couldn't exist. Dirt's the life source for all life on earth. It gives nutrients to the plants. Without plants, without dirt, we have no plants. With no plants, we have no food. We don't have shelter. We don't have clean air to breathe. There's no basis for life. If God didn't create dirt, he probably would have created something else, and it would have the same reputation as dirt, but he created dirt. And he took the time to come down and actually form us out of the dirt. Everything else he just spake into life. But he took the time and he cared enough to actually come down and form us with his own hands. Now if he would take that time to actually form us with his own hands, don't you think that he would take care of us? The last thing is more of an all-encompassing thing that you'll notice. They'll be like Christ. Christ's entire life was an example of how we're supposed to live. He wasn't here a very long time, but he was here long enough to impact the world forever. Even if Jesus wasn't the Son of God, his life would still be the model that we would have to pattern our lives after, because it was so perfect. But he was the Son of God, so it makes it even more important that we follow his example. And it matters how we act, even if the people around us aren't people that we're going to be investing a lot of our time in. Have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? It was a theory. It came out in the 60s. It proposed that a butterfly on one side of the world could flap its wing, and it would move molecules, and those molecules would move other molecules. And on the other side of the world, it would create weather patterns. It was a pretty outrageous theory, and no one really believed it. But it hung around in myths and legends and stories and books and things like that because it was so interesting. Well, in the mid-90s, a group of scientists from universities around the world ended up proving this theory true, that it really does happen. But it doesn't just have to do with butterflies, any moving matter, including people. It shows that no matter what you do, it's going to have an effect on people in the world through the rest of time. There's a man by the name of Norman Borlaug. He's a scientist. He won the Nobel Prize. It's been a long time ago, but he won it for hybridizing corn for arid climates, making corns that would grow in like deserts and places like that. And he's credited with saving the lives of over 2 billion people. And it wasn't exactly Norman Borlaug who was responsible for this. It was actually Henry Wallace. He was the vice president under Truman. Before that, he was the director of agriculture. And he's the one that put together the committee and made the station in Mexico with the purpose of hybridizing corn for arid climates. And he hired Norman Borlaug to run this place for him. So really it should have been Henry Wallace who gets the credit for saving over 2 billion people. But the person that had the impact on him was George Washington Carver. When he was a student in college, one of his professors let him watch his 6-year-old son and take him on botanical expeditions on different weekends. Basically, he was a babysitter of this little 6-year-old boy. George Washington Carver loved plants, and he taught this little boy about plants and how God's creation can have a big impact on life. He created 266 things out of the peanut that we still use. And he created 88 things out of the sweet potato that we still use. But he spent a few weekends with this little 6-year-old Henry Wallace and taught him about God and his creation and how it can help the earth. And because of that, Henry Wallace hired Norman Borlaug, and because of that, all of them are responsible for saving over 2 billion people. But before that, this farmer from Diamond, Missouri, his name was Moses and his wife's name was Susan. He lived in a slave state, but he didn't believe in slavery. And that was a bad thing because that would people like that drew in the Quantrill's raiders who would come and raid their farms. And they raided Moses' farm and burned his barn and drug off some people. And one of the ladies they drug off was a lady by the name of Mary Washington. And she wouldn't let go of her little baby. And so they drug her off into the night. Well, Moses' wife Susan, she was a pretty organized lady, so she sent out messengers. And she told those messengers to go and find the Quantrill's raiders, and they finally did, and they set up a meeting. And she sent her husband Moses out there to meet the Quantrill's raiders. And then he rode out on the black horse, the very last horse they had, because the raiders took everything else. And he rode for hours north until he finally met up with them in the dark. And he traded him the horse, and they throw him this little burlap sack with a little baby in it. He tucked the little baby inside his shirt, and he had to walk all the way back home. He got back the next afternoon, And they heated the little baby up by the fire, rubbing its arms and legs, trying to keep its circulation going. And while they were doing that, they told God that they would raise this baby like their own. And they told the baby that they'd even give it its name, their name. And so that's how George Washington Carver was able to live the life that he was. And Henry Wallace was able to live the life that he was. And therefore Norman Borlaug got all the credit for everyone else's life for saving all over these 2 billion people. So one little action that you do can affect the course of life for someone else, somewhere through history. So the lives we live do matter, so why not live them like Christ? When the term Christian was first used, it was meant as a derogatory term. They were making fun of followers of Christ. Eventually these followers identified or adopted the term as their name. Christian means little Christ. It's an honor to wear the name Christian. To know what it means gives it a whole new meaning to what it means to be a Christian. A whole new mindset. So next time you're called a Christian, think about it. Are you actually living like a little Christ? And do you really love him more than anything else?